welcome to episode 26 of Universe Extended, Planning Phase Syndicate's discussion on all things Star Wars related. This is your point where you can opt out. You can opt out right now. Spoiler alert, heaven is ahead, or is it hell, depending on who you talk to. But spoiler alerts will abound, as tonight we are going to be covering Mando episode 6 and episode 7 in our preamble to get to episode 8, which airs in 3 days here on Disney Plus. With that being said, let's bring in JJ, my co-host for this Universe Extended episode. How are you doing tonight, JJ?
Great, Scott. What a heck of the last 2 episodes it's been for Mando. Man, it was really good. I really enjoyed the last week's, but the 2 weeks ago's episode. That was a nice little change up there for the series. And then we had last week's episode, which is the preamble for the finale, and I cannot wait to see that on Wednesday there. So we'll go with the first episode there. We get the continuation of the story here for Bo-Katan, essentially following her, with Mando being essentially her sidekick almost. They head over to a planet where the remnants of her old crew, who has a pretty large fleet from everything that they've stolen so far, is essentially protecting this particular city here. Now, the episode does start off with I believe the name of the race is Aqualish. They're a ship carrying a Mon Cal prince who is looking to get married with an Aqualish girl in there, and they get stopped by these Mandalorians who are hired by the Mon Cal to essentially retrieve the prince back to their planet there. Now, it's not given much significance on there, but historically, if you take a look at the relationship between the two races, these are two races that have always been almost at war with each other for as long as we've known them for the Star Wars saga. Now, both of those races did come from Mon Cala. They basically exist together, very similar to like the Gungans and the Naboos in their planet. There are two species that occupy that planet, and they've been at war with each other for as long as we know there. So it's kind of interesting to see a sort of like subplot of a pretty high dignitary, right? He's obviously a Mon Cal prince falling in love with the Aqualish girl, and trying to like develop that, only to be interrupted by the very polite Mandalorians that asked them to surrender the prince so that way they could take him back. So they're working as a giant military force, and we can see that they know how to run that Arquitens cruiser very, very well to be very intimidating, to say the least. So we get a look at them going into back to Bo-Katan and Mando going into this city, which looked exactly like one of the old Mandalorian domes, where what we've seen from like Clone Wars and partially in Rebels as well. But basically, it's like this whole automated tube system here, which reminded me exactly of what they reference in the Service of Chila and the Thrawn books and the prequel books, on how they run those automated tubes to make it look like there's activity on the surface. It called back to that for me when I was looking there. And then we run into the rulers of that particular city. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, it was a little bit different, right? Like, it's different than what we had seen before. I guess it's nice to see other, right, like other systems, like it's nice to see this other race, this other people. It's nice to find, like also where, hey, here we are, we're with we're with a whole different, generation, I guess, or like different like outcome. I guess that's a dumb way to put it, but essentially it's nice to see a whole different society that we haven't seen before, right? We're not just freaking on Tatooine or I don't know. It seems like they love Tatooine. Like that's like their favorite
That's their
Freaking
go-to planet.
so it was nice to see that. I guess like it's a little different. I a little confused why they feel they need to go that route a little bit, right? Like, could we do we really need all of that? Right? Like, is it going to pay off? And so my first thoughts was, is any of this other story arc building going to pay off? Now, I will say, as soon as, we see some of the other people on there, it gets very exciting, right? Like there was some star cameos in this
Yes, there was.
episode that will knock your sauce off, knock your socks off, um, hands down.
Yeah,
And
so the stars in particular that we see here is Lizzo acting as the queen, and then we get Jack Black making an appearance as General Bombardier, which is the funniest name for an
it's
imperial.
Captain Bombardier.
Oh, yeah, Captain Bombardier. Yeah, exactly. Which, like, the second that they said that name, I'm like, oh man, this guy's gonna die in an explosion just because he has to. And they're essentially specifically Captain Bombardier is a person who's gone through the New Republic's uh reprogramming, I want to call it, program, where they basically take ex-imperials who have worked for the empire and basically desensitize them to, or deprogram them from the empire's way of thinking, to become a member of the New Republic society. And now he is married to the princess of this particular world, and they together have uh, set up a what they call a utopia for their citizens, where nobody needs to work. Everything is built on the backs of the droids that take care of all the work for the citizens, and they are all contained within that dome. The everything is run by the people. Complete. I, Basically,
It's a
there's
socialist
no
utopia.
workers. Yeah, exactly. And they're having some droid problems. They come to find out.
Yes. So all right. So to begin with, just being able to see Lizzo and Jack Black show up is like holy shit. Like that to me that's the fun part of Mando, right? Like I get Andor is like super serious, blah 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 blah. But to me, Mando, like it makes everything to see them. And I don't care what the naysayers say. Like I really think both of them are very good actors. Um, the way Lizzo just falls in love with Grogu is like, damn it,
Perfect.
we're saying Grogu now instead of Baby Yoda. That's sad. But the way she just falls in love with Grogu is like, holy crap. Like, and like you could tell Mando is like, oh my god, like, is she gonna like steal baby Grogu? Right? Is he gone? Like, what's gonna happen? Like every time she's like, don't worry. And he's in here like, I don't trust droids, but I don't trust them. I don't know who to trust. Um, but the best part about it is they're having a droid problem, and Din Djarin is ecstatic that there is a droid problem he gets to help take care of. Like, I don't think he even cares or thinks about that he's on some weird side mission. He just knows there's a droid problem. Droids are causing you issues. All right, here we go, baby. Like, he's all excited to take care of this problem. And like his reactions to that were like the best for it. And I agree, like Captain Bombardier, like I really hope we get like an ex-Imperial pilot or something like that. Give me Captain Bombardier in a scenario pack, or maybe he'll show up in the new bomber set for X-Wing, right? Like maybe we'll get lucky and get because he is decommissioned. Like essentially he's a decommissioned Imperial guy, right? And I'll be honest with you, the first time when they said that, I honestly thought there was something nefarious being set up here. Like I genuinely thought there was a nefarious thing that was going to happen
Yeah, me too.
with him, and we find out it obviously at the end it does not. But that was really what because that's how they've been teasing this whole episode. But who else do we see? We see freaking Christopher Lloyd, right? He's the guy that reprogrammed all the droids for them, or essentially instructed the people how to reprogram all the droids. He is the master in control for the droids. And so, of course, Din has to go, they have to go find who it is. They have to start interviewing people. And of course, he's the first person who says it. And you can just tell, like, he regretfully has to say, we're a social society. Like, you could just hear him. It's like listening to, like, a MAGA hat. That's what it felt like. It's like we have some guy that's so anti all of this. That's what it felt like when he was doing that. Um, and yeah, Logan's Run. Yeah, I can see how this is kind of a ripoff of some of
Yeah,
Logan's Run.
definitely.
That
Yeah,
I can see.
definitely some tropes, some similar tropes.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah. So
So
they move on right from there, and they're doing investigation, and they go to a droid bar. And I will tell you, I thought that was a little cheesy because I don't understand what is served at a droid bar. Because if you watch Futurama, what do they serve at a droid bar? Oil, right?
yeah,
Like it, or
exactly.
and beer. Like that's it. Like, what is this droid bar doing other than maybe allowing droids to socialize? I don't know.
I
What was
mean,
your take on the droid bar? I was a little confused by that.
it's their place to plug it into different ports and interchange information with other droids in a social setting between themselves. Just hope that they keep those ports clean. Just saying.
Ugh, no, AJ.
I was really hoping. So the best part about the droid bar actually was that we got to see a lot of droids that we've seen from all the different parts of Star Wars, namely a lot of old Separatist droids. We see a lot of Republic droids. We see Rebel droids in there. We see some of the old protocol droids for the Empire in there as well. A couple of astromechs. So it's really cool to see all those droids from the various eras basically in one place in there, right? So that I did appreciate that part there. I can only imagine that on the background trying to operate and control all those droids, how many technicians they must have had running in the background for that part there, for that shot there. But essentially we find out that there is a particular type of, I guess, lubricant or oil. I wasn't sure what exactly it was that the malfunctioning droids had obtained there at the bar, which was causing them to malfunction on there. And I gotta say, the scenes where they showed the droids malfunctioning was actually quite hilarious, particularly the chef droid with
Yes.
the four arms that decided to turn into a slasher film. Holy crap, that was hilarious.
Well, and it makes you want that droid, right? Like it's like,
Yeah,
why do we not have these droids in our society, and why are they not in more Star Wars things?
yeah,
Except for
exactly.
I swear to God that chopper droid showed up. Was it maybe it was Bad Batch? I'm trying to remember where we seen that droid
It,
before,
it was
and
in Book of Boba, definitely,
that's
because
what it. Okay,
that's what we see Din sneak up on inside of Jabba's palace. Yeah,
that's right. But I was just like, and then that was hilarious. Like that piece of it was hilarious because yeah, you're just like all of them are just and like and here's Din just kind of walking around like like and you can just hear him in his head just shaking his head, be like, this is what they get for allowing droids to do everything. I can hear it.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
ugh.
And then finally he gets directed to the loading area where we have old decommissioned battle droids doing
Yeah.
basically manual labor. They're carrying all this stuff,
Yeah,
and
that was a good idea.
then they're being directed by a B1 droid
Yep.
that's like manning all these lines. And Mando has some of the best like physical like comedy for that part because he's just kicking every single battle droid, and it was very much like iRobot with Will Smith when he's like basically like threatening all those AI, all those robots in line just to get the one that's gonna like react. It definitely felt like that, but it was really comical to see the all those B1s back there in live action.
Yeah, like, and I like how he's like, I don't think you should be doing that.
Yeah.
You should not be doing that. And he like didn't just like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, what does it matter to you? Like, like I do agree that was hilarious. And like, but who thought that was a good idea to put battle droids to work? Who? Who thought that was a good idea? What society was that like, oh, we could just decommission these war tech weapons that mass murdered things and, and
And their
make them
primary
serve us?
directive was to war. Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
oh my god, who thought that was a good idea? I don't know. Um,
But that was a great clue in there, right? Because it obviously, the biggest abundance of having all these separatist droids just running everything there, right? Of running all the hard labor points to somebody who's very, very familiar with the separatist tech, which brings us back to Christopher Lloyd's character, the engineer, who had programmed all of these all of these droids from the beginning and was the mastermind behind the nanomachines that were inside those lubricants, causing all the malfunctions for all those droids. And just that speech that he gave, right, of how he basically hated that society and he felt that they had essentially felt that Count Dooku was right in his vision, and the rant that he gave, it was actually something that was unexpected from Christopher Lloyd and how he delivered that particular speech.
Yeah. No, and I think that I really think that that's, to me, this episode really hit home in that aspect of we can still have fun, but have a good show, right? And I think I can't remember the lady's name, but she's related to the Howard. So it's probably Dallas Howard. That's her name, right?
Yeah, Dallas Bryce Howard. Mhm.
Yep. She's the one that I think directed the majority of this episode. And you could definitely tell when she directs something versus, like, she has a little bit more of a comedy streak. I mean, for Christ's sake, like, her father was involved with Arrested Development. This was like a very
Yeah,
Arrested Development, um, like, episode, which is one of my favorite shows. Like, I love that. I love that series. But the comical value of this just shows that Star Wars does not need to be serious 24/7. Like, yeah, I like Andor, and people are used to Andor, and that I think we're gonna get that in episode 8. We get some of it in episode 7, which we'll get to in just a second. But like, we will get that in episode 8. Like, it's a guarantee we're gonna get an Andor feel at the end of the show. Um,
yeah,
but obviously all of it wraps up where they figure it out. Oh no, they figure it out. It's the stupid guy. It's Christopher Lloyd's character who's programmed them all, which how they didn't see that to begin with is beyond me. I mean, it seemed pretty evident based on how he reacted, but I mean, I guess you got to give everyone the benefit of the doubt in the New Republic. Um, but all of this leads up to them being able to impress the Mandalorians that they hired to protect their city. Now, here's where the weird thing is, and maybe this is just me being nitpicky, but like, so they go back and then they have to confront the Mandalorians. If the Mandalorians agree to leave, which we'll talk about in a second, but if the Mandalorians agree to leave, like, what happens to that city, right? Like, why is that city all of a sudden going, oh, it's okay, go ahead and leave? I mean, we only spent millions of credits on keeping you here to protect us, not just from the droids, like, protect us from everything else. But here, but we're going to get, if you can fix your droid problem, you get permission to leave. We don't care. Like,
yeah.
what happens? Like, I mean, I guess they could call the New Republic and become part New Republic. I mean, they hinted at that, right?
It's simple. The Mandalorians had 1099, so they can leave at their own will. It's simple. File your taxes if you haven't.
So we move on, right? And they get the guy.
Yeah.
It's a whole handover. You can tell Grogu does not want to leave. I like Grogu loved Lizzo, and I don't know if they did that on purpose.
To the point that he actually used the Force ability to cheat on her behalf on the game that they're playing. Like, the heck, Grogu. Golly, they leave him alone for like half of an episode, and he's already involved in like racketeering.
I know,
Jeez.
like, he's like he would be like Jabba's little minion. He could be Jabba number 2. There you go.
So finally, we get to the whole point of the quest, which was Bo-Katan getting an audience with her former Mandalorian crew that she was running with, and we get one of the best named Mandalorians there. Golly, I forget. Wolf. Golly, what's his last name? Wolf Knight, I believe, is his name. And he essentially dismisses Bo-Katan's request to come join her to retake Mandalore because she returned without the Darksaber. And we get one of the most controversial calls in the series so far, where Din essentially uses a pathologic, saying that because he was defeated by and he was captured by the enemy that we saw back in episode 2, and then she picked up the Darksaber to rescue him and defeat that enemy, that because of that she won the Darksaber in combat, and thus now is the rightful owner for the Darksaber and provides her with the Darksaber to give her a legitimate claim to the Darksaber. And this allows her to essentially challenge the wolf in combat and essentially help cement her leadership for the group there. Now, that being said, is is do you think that logic really holds up, or is that just a point for Din to kind of circumvent the whole issue of legitimacy for Bo-Katan?
To me, it feels like a writer's cop out. It okay. Logically, it makes sense. Yes, like with the dark saber, you lose it in. He lost the dark saber in combat, even though he wasn't using it. Was defeated by an enemy. She saved him with the dark saber. Therefore, it's hers. I think on a bullshit scale, it makes sense, right? And I think if we look at things in context of the Star Wars universe, it makes sense. Is to me feels like very cheap writing, I guess. Personally, and I will tell you that we should have found that answer out well before that episode. Like we should have also suggested that. And I guess just by the fact that nobody was really suggesting that as the answer probably makes it legitimate and fair and something that we just need to accept. And if you think about it in a Western style story, which is really what they're telling, it makes that makes sense, right? Like it does fit into that style of writing that they have. Personally, I feel it's lazy writing. And none of it's gonna I don't know, maybe none of it's gonna matter here in episode 8, but I don't know. It just it felt a little lazy. It pissed me off. We'll put it that way. I was not happy with that piece of it. But at the same token, if that's the worst thing that they've turned out so far, I mean, anything's better than like that point in time is better than the Book of Boba Fett altogether. How about that?
Yeah,
like the writing is still a million times better for that piece than almost anything we saw in the Book of Boba Fett. So, like,
yeah,
like, I mean, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, no, I agree with you there. So finally, we end with the episode with Bo-Katan having the remainder of the fleet coming. With the remainder of the fleet coming to join her, and so that way they can go and take over Mandalore. And now we come back to episode 23, which is titled "The Spies." Here, now this is the episode that's setting up for the finale. Here, we see the rest of Bo-Katan's group come in and come over the planet Navarro, and we see probably one of the best signs of the Architans underneath the giant. They painted a giant mythosaur symbol underneath the Architans, just showing that they're in control of it. That was a really great visual effect to start off the episode there.
Yeah, so I think that's amazing. Actually, that's really cool. Like, I don't know who thought that, how they did that, or what artist like put that all together, but that was really genius. But I want to back up just a second because I think we missed something. At the end of episode 6, they talk about where they're going to go, right? And Mando offers them that plot of land at Grief's compound area, essentially, right?
The lava flats. Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially he's offering them land, saying, "Hey, let's just go here. We can now settle in the open. There's enough of us that we shouldn't be scared at all." And that's what leads into episode 7, where you're saying, "Hey, all of a sudden, these artisan or architan, I don't know how you say them, but these cruisers,
yeah,
like they're showing up, and there's like at least 3 or 4 gauntlets, and there's at least one Ghazi, if not 2."
So this is what I
Gazantes.
saw. I saw 2 Gazantes, the Architan's cruiser. I saw 4 Sea Rock cruisers and at least 3 squadrons of Fang fighters in that fleet. This is a serious Mandalorian fleet now that's equipped with a capital ship that can back it up and a ton of fighters and support fighters to back up those ships in there. This is going to be a force to reckon with for sure.
Yeah. And they fly in, they sit down, they land, they start going through things, and we get a cutscene. We go away. Like, right, because all of a sudden everybody's like, "Oh my god, Grief, like, all these people are coming, they're gonna kill us." And he's like, no, see, there's a Mandalorian symbol. Don't worry about it. It's a promise I made. I told nobody about this promise, but by the way, I've offered them land to come protect us, right? They're gonna come protect us, and they get some free land. And like nobody knows about this but me, but don't worry, I approve this, you know.
Yeah, I wonder how
Which
everybody
seems
felt. I wonder how everybody felt when their quote unquote protectors picked up all their ships and decided to leave the planet.
well, I know, and that's yeah. So we haven't even so they've done this twice now, right? And so now you're jumping ahead a little bit. So let's jump ahead a little bit, and so like they get into it, and now it's a discussion where they decide to internally the Mandalorians are all talking about, well, let's go back to Mandalore. Well, wait, why the fuck did you just settle here? What is wrong with you people? Like, why did you do this? Why are you all you picked up and moved from illogical location and camp, which we knew you had to do because you had to get away because the New Republic could figure out where you were, right? Like that's a fact. We know that can happen. Blah 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 blah. So we're gonna settle here in the lava flats. Oh, but hey, one day or 2 days later, why don't we just decide we're gonna take back Mandalore because couldn't you just have the conversation already? Like, did you really have to move your whole fleet, spend all that fuel to do this, to turn around and do it again? Now they're going to be a
Yeah,
little bit more careful about not moving everybody. Like I don't think they're taking all of the whole
no,
fleet.
yeah, no. They specifically Bo-Katan. First off, we get the the reintroduction of the convert essentially meeting with Bo-Katan's crew, and essentially the way that they took off their helmets. You can see that the converts were completely offended at the fact that they did that, right? Because to them, that's not the way. And it's a combination of Bo Katan trying to keep the peace and the armor coming out to be like, well, they're here. Let's welcome our family and friends, and we're gonna throw a feast and eat together. Which, when she said that, I'm like, okay. They said in previous episodes that in order to eat, you take your food and you walk away to your own places to be alone. Does that mean that you just left all your guests there and you're either going to sit there and watch them eat and you just stare at them because you can't eat because you would have to remove your helmet? Or does everybody just walk away, leaving the newbies eat the food with nobody there to be there with them? It seems counterintuitive there at that point, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like why? I don't. Um.
So,
So
yes.
so we see two side things. So we divert from that. So we should spend too much time on that because it is weird, and I don't know. I don't want to
Yeah.
call that lazy writing, but like it is a little silly-ish to have that happen. But then we get Grief coming on board, and he's like, "Hey, I got something for you, Mando." And Mando's like, and he's like, "No, seriously, come with me." And I don't know whether there's day or night ever in this city because like all of a sudden it's light outing. It was close to
Yeah.
night, and now it's light out, and Mando's in the city with Grogu, and guess who shows up?
We
IG
get
11 or IG
uh,
12 now.
yes, we get the body of IG-12 being driven by one of the little Babu Frick aliens coming in, driving it like it's a giant mech vehicle for him, which was just awesome. I love that little aspect of it that they were able to do that. It makes me wonder why that race hasn't done that to every single droid that they could get their hands on in order to defend themselves from the larger species, right?
Yes. And the best part about that is he's in there, like, and this is the comic gold of that whole thing. Like, he's in the suit, and then he jumps out and he says something to Grogu, like, basically, like, bad baby.
Yeah,
When he
he's like, man,
jumps
baby,
out.
no huggy, no
Yep.
huggies.
And it's like, that's, obviously that's the throwback to what episode 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just hilarious because it's just like, yeah, these little tiny mechanics, which I really hope we get more in X-Wing. Like, give me some generic Babu Frick mechanics.
Yeah.
Like, just give me a few. Give me something I could throw inside. Oh, give me something I could put in my separatist ships that repair a droid.
Oh
Ugh,
gosh, no.
I love that.
Heck.
Um, but anyway, so Mando's like, no, I say no, and Grogu's like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," and he's like, I said no, rah, 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 rah," and then Greef's like, just let him try it, or just let him run around the office, and literally within like 30 seconds, Grogu gets the hang of it, and guess what the mechanics did? They didn't give a full speech capability. They just gave a yes no button. And you know what the first thing I thought of? Have you ever seen those TikToks or Facebook reels where they have the dog, the huskies that have
Yes.
like the buttons and they hit the buttons? And like, I never know whether these are fake or real, right? I genuinely never understand. But all I can fucking say is that Grogu is now telling Mando no or yes with a stupid button. Like, nobody can figure out how do we just rig it up so that the child could talk to you. The engineers are like, one more thing to fuck with you, Mando. We know you hate
Yeah.
droids. Now you really are gonna hate this droid because it has a baby inside that's telling you yes and no. I guess he's not a baby. He's probably like 100 years old, but
Yeah, and now Mando's like, "Oh my god, I haven't childproofed anything," because the very next thing what happens is that they're walking to the market, and Grogu uses his newfound abilities to reach things he couldn't reach before and just start eating them whenever he wanted to.
yeah. And oh, what's the nod? What's the nod to the Rebel show? What type of fruit does he grab?
The Melu runs. Yes, that is
Yes.
Hera's favorite fruit. And as soon as he picked it up, I was like, that's a Melu run. Oh my god, that was so great just seeing that. Just hope that they take some of them with them so that way when they meet Hera, she's gonna have something to eat.
um so that's really enough of that. Then we got to transition to um
The
the
meat.
the new empire, right? You know, the beginning of the first order. And so they basically have a scene where we all of a sudden have what's his name? God, I can't remember the
Moff
actor's
Gideon.
name. Yeah, I know Moff Gideon. What's the
Oh,
actor's name?
Luis Esposito.
There you go. Where we have Louise, and essentially, like, he's got the devilish face, right? He's still smiling. He still looks like he's innocent, but he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna mess with you." It's like a daytime soap opera face. That's what it reminds me of. Like, he just reminds me of like a daytime soap opera face. You know, like, I'm going to pretend I'm a good guy, but I'm not, and I'm going to talk to you like this. And he just always, I know he's in a million things, but like, it always brings back the aspect of the Community episode. I don't know if you ever
Yes.
watched Community, but he
Yeah.
basically, like, him and Chevy Chase are like brothers and blah blah blah. And he sets up this video game to win his dad's estate, and it's just like this whole evil video game episode. If you haven't seen it, it is literally the best Community episode ever. I actually have a T-shirt with the little characters from Community, as the 8-bit characters on it. Um, anyway, so so we start off where he walks into a console. And at first he's okay. Let's back up. The first thing it is, we find out that him and whoever that lady's name is from um Coruscant, right?
Yeah.
We find out that she officially is working for Gideon, 100%. And we also find out that essentially she is in leagues with him, knew that Gideon somehow existed, and has been plotting along this whole time, and has to tell him, by the way, the Mandalorians have all secured themselves. And you're like, why does she care? But it's a whole thing. So, like, we'll find out in a minute why. There's a reason. And she tells him they're all going back to Mandalore, which this was when I found out what was at Mandalore, I actually was genuinely surprised. I did not know that and did not expect that. And I'm not going to tip off what it is real quick, but anyway, so Gideon doesn't care. I'll take care of it like I always do, blah, 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 blah. Then Gideon walks into this whole meeting where you have all these holo projectors, and we see all sorts of crazy stuff that we never thought we'd see. And they have a whole conversation about bringing back Thrawn.
Yes. The promised villain that we've been expecting for quite some time since his first name mentioned in season 2. Now, in this cast of admirals, we do see Admiral Paleon, which we last saw him as part of the Seventh Fleet in Thrawn's fleet at the end of Rebels, and his fleet was suspiciously absent. Now, here's the interesting part, right? He's there also with Brandon Hux, who is General Hux's father from the First Order that we see on there. Now, the interesting part is that at the end of Rebels, Paleon was there above Lothal when the hyperspace Korgals, the hyperspace beast anyway, came in and basically moved the fleet out of the blockade position on there. So it makes me wonder how he was able to return, and Thrawn hasn't returned yet. Like, what was the difference there? I wonder.
Yeah, and I think that's where we don't know yet 100%. And if you listen to how the dynamics are going, right? I can't remember who the other admiral is, but the Hux character and that other admiral are looking at each other and talking to each other.
Paleon, yeah, it was
Yeah,
Paleon and Hux. Yeah,
it makes you think Paleon never left, right? That he
yes, exactly.
was in hiding early on. Like he was a contingency plan that we just didn't know was a contingency plan, right? Um, which I will be honest is a little it's a little different. It's not a I don't think that's a Palpatine-ish thing. I think Palpatine creates contingency plans for himself, and a little bit for the remnant, but I think if Palpatine had a very strong contingency plan, and maybe this is the backstory to defining that, but we never got that gist before with the sequel movies and anything really that Palpatine had some huge master comeback plan. But this kind of reveals that there has to have been some sort of a contingency plan. There had to have been something in the works because otherwise they would not be this well organized um for the remnants, right? And
Mhm.
it almost makes me feel like those two do not like Gideon at all because
Yeah,
they look at each other to give approval when Gideon asks for more
recognition.
resources
Yeah,
for his
exactly. Yeah,
plan to stop the Mandalorians. And they talk about cloning, right? And essentially, we know Moff Gideon is involved in cloning, but he denies it to them. Like, it's weird. And it's weird that none of those fuckers know. Like, how did none of them know that Gideon's involved in? I don't understand that. Like, there's somehow those people are missing some sort of a link, but he denies it, and like everybody's just like okay, well, yeah, sure, no problem. But it's
so
like
it's
you,
it's pretty interesting, right? Because it makes it seem like the rest of those Ambrose are following Project Necromancer, which we know that this is most
yeah,
likely linked to the return of Palpatine. And as far as they know, Gideon is most likely entrusted with Project War Mantle. Which we hear it during Rogue One as one of the list of different operations that the Empire was starting to work on, and in Legends, Operation War Mantle was for the creation of the Dark Troopers that eventually became part of the Special Forces for the Empire. And we know, based on season 2 for Mandalorian, that he walks through still a bunch of those Dark Troopers, which have newer armor, which we'll get to that in a bit, as he's walking into that. So it seems like he was running two different projects at the same time, one of them being hidden from the rest of the admirals that are working on Project Necromancer.
yeah. And it kind of brings back the rivalry between Thrawn
Krennic.
and Krennic with the Defender slash the Death Star, right?
Death Star. Hmm.
And it would not surprise me if Palpatine had put other irons in the fire to argue with each other, right? Like that does not surprise me one bit. Um, but anyway, so they have a whole discussion. It's a whole thing. Gideon says, "I'm basically being going. They're going to try to murder me. You need to fucking give me money so I don't die. Do it now, y'all cloning bastards. You have the money." It's like a whole thing.
And he
Um,
specifically requests Praetorian guards to come
yes,
in and assist them for it.
which is weird, right? Because I mean, I didn't know they existed then. We know they exist with Snoke, right? Like we know that. Um, and I didn't know there was any of them left. And they haven't really gone into. I don't think that like in Legends they talk about how they're trained and things like that. But I don't think in canon we've ever had that taste, have we?
Actually, I think we've seen at least the precursor to the Praetorians, right? So the first instance that we see them is in Rebels, actually, when Ezra is taken before into Thrawn's Star Destroyer, and he essentially gets tempted by Palpatine to reopen the portal. When he destroys the portal, he has red guards come out and essentially tries to take out Ezra, and Ezra manages to overcome them. I think that is the very first instance that we see of the Praetorian Guards, or at least a precursor to the Praetorian Guards, in canon, and now that leads to where they are now here. Also in Return of the Jedi, when Luke is brought to before Palpatine with Vader, I believe they're actually standing guard, although they're wearing much longer robes and they have a staff, but they're basically guarding that elevator entrance, and they're dismissed by the Emperor to go away once Luke is brought before him with Vader present there. So more than likely they have been in there. They just may have had an update for it. But it makes me wonder, what the hell were they doing after
Yeah.
Palpatine died? Like, well, I mean, I guess we got to have a job somewhere. We got to just just gonna hang out here until we need to protect somebody.
Yeah, I think that they were moved and they're protecting other higher up people, right? Like that's got to be the theory. Like I don't know what else
Yeah,
it would be. I mean, I guess it's probably inconsequential at that point, but um so then I mean there's so much to go through, but like
yeah,
that to me that's actually the crux of a lot of the episode. And I will be honest with you, the thing I do not like is I know what Thrawn should be in the books, and it feels like we're getting a pushback to the old Thrawn from extended, and I don't like it. I do not like that at all. But we will see. I will not hold out and be upset until the end of Ahsoka. But I will warn you, there's a possibility of some incoming rants when we hit Ahsoka time, because like Thrawn is my absolute favorite character, and after Timothy Zahn made him better, it's going to be really hard to go back
yeah.
to it.
I just I'm gonna withhold judgment until I see everything, and that would include the Filoni movie that's coming out, which will include Thrawn. I think that that will help solidify my thoughts on it. But so I'll hold judgment until then.
Yeah.
So
So now we got to move forward in time because otherwise we'll be here all night. And
yeah,
we move forward in time, and essentially Um, there's tension between the two different Mandalorian tribes. Um, and they decide they're all going back to Mandalore to scout it, because essentially they've determined we can scout this, but we don't know what it is, but we need to cleanse it. And that's why we have Moff Gideon all freaked out for whatever reason, which we find out in like 5 minutes what it is. But so they end up going back to Mandalore, and they find that they are not the only people there. There is a remnant group of Mandalorians that are somehow still alive on Mandalore. So they immediately rescue the ones that they have to rescue. Within one day, make a determination that they're going to use them to keep the few of them that can keep going to keep going. And oh, by the way, we also find out they happen to know where the eternal source flame is, right? Like they know, and like all of a sudden we would go from like having to have a whole episode where they investigate where it is to somebody goes, "Hey, I know where that is. I can show you." And you're like, "Oh, fuck me." Like, all right, sure,
it
let's
always
go.
helps to have local help, right? Exactly. But crucially, at this point, we have the armorer offering to take the injured that they are carrying around up to their fleet so that way they can receive medical attention. And she takes Bo Katan's gauntlet to space to meet the Mandalorian fleet. But crucially, we don't see her get into the ships. We just see her have a view of the ships while she's going up there. Meanwhile, we go back to the ground. We see Grogu in his IG suit basically stop a fight between the leader Wolf and Paz Vizsla in a fight over chess. They should have seen our chess series, and basically become that peacekeeper in there. And it's really interesting to see the influences of the Jedi in Grogu and using his ability to disseminate the fights there, right? Even more so than Bo Katan, right? Because Bo Katan is watching this develop. She basically knows what's going to happen and she lets it happen, whereas Grogu goes in and stops it without having to use force or even words to stop, which is really interesting. Right after that, we get the emergence of most likely I would call it space Star Wars Godzilla, to come in and basically blow up the or disrupt the entire area, forcing the Mandalorians to flee into a nearby cave where the furnace is, essentially where they're looking for. And as soon as they get in there and they get their bearings, we get the appearance of Imperial Super Commandos, which is what we were expecting to see the whole time for it. And we get this great shootout. What were your thoughts on that?
So the first question I have is: are those Imperial Super Commandos droids like the Dark Troopers,
No,
or no? Okay, so they are
no.
real humans.
Most likely they're remnants of Clan Saxon, which is what we saw in the season 4 Rebels.
Yeah. So it's hilarious because we get a scene where Gideon walks through this like open area and there's all these super commandos just standing here at attention, and all these like lights go off and it's almost like they have them frozen in time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what they were going for or not, but yeah. So all of a sudden we get the Mandos getting in there. Basically, they get ambushed. They feel their ambush. They're freaking out. They don't know what to do. Um, and I feel that that was a pretty amazing sequence of things of all the shooting. Like I really enjoyed the usage of the super commandos. It was definitely showing that they are bigger and better than what you would have thought normally. And they are still pretty poor at shooting. Even though they're super commandos, they're still pretty poor at shooting. They still miss quite a bit.
It's because they can only change one focus into a hitman. That's why.
Well, that's very true. In this, so I understand why they do that. Because you just can't have like 50 super commandos come out and murder like a group of 20. Like you just can't have that. That would just like you. It doesn't make for a very good story. But they are pretty comically bad shooters for being command Mandalorians, you know. And
Yeah.
maybe it's because they were frozen in time. But I love the action sequences where everybody starts getting flushed out, and they are essentially like Paz Vizsla and his chain gun is just like, oh my god, that's like Fallout 4, like baby,
Yes.
like that is just like, ooh, I love it. And
Yeah.
he is such a badass. Just
I particularly like the scenes with Din and Bo-Katan fighting in that melee because they understand that they're wearing Beskar, so they obviously target the soft spots. So there's parts where they particularly target underneath the neck or under the arms, or like at the hip joints to disable and take out their attackers, and they're very surgical about it. I appreciated that part, whereas the Super Commandos were just taking wide shots at anything that they could, and it was bouncing off of the armor plates, the Beskar armor plates. So I think that that lack of training was the difference there between the two, and you could see it visibly. So the Mandalorian group easily pushes back against the Super Commandos, and the Super Commando starts retreating, and Bo-Katan orders the assault to move forward and track them down. They move forward and forward until they find themselves inside of a dock, and that's where the trap is sprung. They're caught between a ray shield and a closed hangar bay, with Din Djarin standing in the center, or standing on the other side of the ray shield, while the rest of the Mandalorians are caught behind the ray shields, helpless to help them until we see the appearance of a black Mandalorian armored uh, foe, and it is Moff Gideon in full Beskar, decked out with helmet and all, and he makes his appearance.
yeah, which they make him look like a Vader. Like,
Yes,
he does not look like a Mandalorian now. He looks like Vader. Like somebody
yes,
was like, "Here, how do we make Moff Gideon into Vader?" Which, if we get Moff Gideon with Vader abilities in freaking X-wing, I quit. Like, I'm not gonna play that. Like, not gonna play against that shit. Um,
so so going on that, right? Because I absolutely agree with you. He did look a lot like Vader. So is it possible that his purpose for cloning is to clone himself with the midichlorian counts of other fallen Jedi to give himself force powers that way?
but if he clones himself, he's not himself.
Right. But
It's
he's
not the same.
creating a copy. And
Yeah,
the reason I say that is because we get a good speech from him after he captures Din, essentially saying that he recognizes what every civilization has to offer, and he tries to take the best of all of them in order to capture their abilities for it. He makes references to the Jedi, he makes a reference to the rebellion, he makes a reference for the Mandalorians, and it just seems to me that he wants to unify them all in a single for a single purpose, and that's the only logical
Uh,
explanation to me.
I no, I don't agree with that. I do not think that he cloned himself, and I say that because if we look at Palp, right, the reason Palp clones himself is because he's transferring his consciousness from one person to another. Like it's a Sith thing. I don't foresee Moth cloning himself because he wants to make himself better when in reality he won't be himself. No, I don't see that. Um I don't see that. I feel that's too big of a stretch. I do think his speech relates more to how does he clone and create the ultimate warrior, right? Or the ultimate being? Or is he creating and taking all of this and feeding it into Pelp, right? Like, how do I make Pelp a better version of himself than he was before? Um, that's more what I got out of it. I can't imagine he's cloned himself. I don't. Maybe he does that, but that seems a little off there for this series. That seems a little out there. Um,
Okay.
Now, doesn't mean he doesn't want to try to make himself better. Um, and maybe he's found a way to inject himself with midichlorians, right? Or inject himself with whatever they're now going to call the ability to have the force. Because I don't think they're using midichlorians anymore, are they?
I don't know. They've early in the Mandalorian when they were referring to Grogu's blood was his M count,
Okay.
and the last time they used that term was Phantom Menace. So I think that's what that's what makes sense at least.
Yeah. So my theory would be more or less that he is they are making it he's trying to imbibe himself with different things. So I consider it more like a Resident Evil type thing. Like, here, give me a virus and make me a little bit better. And maybe I was just playing too much Resident Evil,
Star
but
Star Wars Nemesis, right?
yeah. Well, we did talk about that. And there was a book series on
That's right.
um zombie like ones. But anyway, that'd be more my theory. So obviously they hold a fight. All of a sudden they capture them all. They drag Din out. Say, "Give me Din." Capture him. Lock everybody away. And basically now we don't know what's going to happen to Din. And I don't know why they didn't just kill him right there. So there has to be an overall reason that we're going to see next episode why they didn't kill him. But essentially, he tells Bo-Katan just to go to get everybody out and get to safety. And you can see Grogu's freaking out, not knowing what to do. And Bo-Katan gets pissed off, decides to go cut a hole in the back one. And then Gideon's like, shit, I never thought about that. She's got the dark saber and can cut a hole. So we're just going to start shooting the glass. Like, come on. Like, that was dumb. Um, but then Paz Vizsla says, let me handle it. There's too many of them, but I can at least stop them so you can get away. And then what do we get? Paz Vizsla stepping up and literally wiping out almost all of the super commandos present. Like, you got to be effing kidding me. Especially after he says, I can't take them all, but I can at least hold them up. But next thing you know, he has downed every single super commando. Period. Like, hell's yeah. Like,
Yeah.
he's not he's realized that you either live long enough to become a villain or die a hero. He has realized he needs to die to be a hero. And then I think he didn't realize he was going to kill all them and didn't know what to do. And we see his true weakness is that the guards kill him because he's too slow. Like,
Yes.
I killed everything else, but I'm too slow to move to avoid getting stabbed to death.
Yeah, and that we see the Praetorian Guard come out and expertly dispatch him by using their I guess I would call them like vibro braids, I guess, and basically cut them down. But that was probably one of the best scenes of self-sacrifice that we've seen in Star Wars. For Paz Vizsla, like it was just. It was a good scene, to see the way how he went out. It was a great scene.
Yeah. And here's the whole reason, though, is because Gideon has taken over Mandalore as a production facility. So there you go. That is the ultimate reason that we avoided talking about this whole episode, is because the reason nobody wants them back is because there's a whole facility with TIE intercept. Like, do you see those TIE interceptors just hanging there? Like, they're coming out next episode in a fight. And oh, do we get super commandos and TIE interceptors? Is that what we're gonna get?
What we do know is that he does order at the end of the episode to launch all the TIE bombers and TIE interceptors to go attack the Mandalorian fleet. So we will, at minimum, have a big space battle above the skies of Mandalore for this next episode. And I cannot wait to see the Mandalorian fleet in action versus a swarm of interceptors. It's going to be fantastic.
It just feels like those TIE bombers are just going to die to those Fang fighters. Like, maybe it's because Fang fighters roll, 4 dice at range 1 and get a green evade for free. But it just kind of feels like a Fang fighter is going to fly up to the TIE bomber and be like, "Peace, buddy." And you could drop a bomb all you want. It ain't going to matter. Like, you're gone. Like,
I expect a couple of seismic charges to go off. I expect proton bombs to be present. I want one pilot to say Concordia as he's fighting somebody. I want the full works, the full gamut. I expect this to be the best space battle that we've seen in a Star Wars TV show to date. This has got to be the best, right?
It should be, but we don't know. I don't know. It depends on I haven't heard how long the last episode is.
Yeah.
So if it's only 30 minutes, I mean, they seem to be pretty consistent. It will be a little sad because they're going to have to fit a space battle, rescuing Din or killing Din, depending on which way they go with it. Or maybe they keep them for the next season. I mean, it could be a whole thing.
As I believe they said, this is the last season of Mandalorian, and everything will be resolved in the movie by Dave Filoni. So
no, I thought they said they were working on season 4 already.
Okay, all right. I haven't heard that as of yet, but we could perhaps see Din during the Ahsoka series. But yeah, it is definitely heading to a very big finale, and I cannot wait to see how they resolve this. And wild predictions now for the final episode. Do we see Thrawn show up in a TIE Phantom?
See who show up in a TIE Phantom?
Thrawn.
No, I hope not.
That would be a hell of a return.
It would be. It would be nice to see Thrawn's return in this. Yes.
Do we see Ezra in an E-wing?
No, we don't see any of those in the Mandalorian. You're not getting any of that, buddy. You might get to see Thrawn come back, but you're not seeing anything else. So,
okay, cool.
There's no way they're not gonna give us a 5-month spoiler event. No way. Now, just real quick, the executive producer and director, Rick, I can't pronounce his last name, Fam Yuani.
Yeah.
At Celebration, discussed the prospect of season 4 already starting.
Okay, good.
Yep, within 20. So, and he's the one that directed the final 2 episodes of season 3.
Okay, good.
Actually, weirdly enough. So he says, I mean, look, I don't think it's a secret that Favreau is excited about continuing telling the story. He's written season 4. I don't know. I don't know. I'd be shocked if they just stopped making them at this point. But yeah, I think that just show comes together, the process, blah, 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 blah. Pre-production process, and now exactly when it goes to lens and starts shooting, but I don't know that for sure. So he's indicating that they've already written. I don't think he was supposed to say that, is my guess, but he's indicating that it's been written and they're waiting on approval or starting. So
Okay.
So yes, I don't think season 4. I think that happens before the movie. That's my theory.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right. Well, I don't know what we're gonna do because JJ is supposed to be off on Sunday, but I'm not gonna miss episode 8. So we are gonna have to cast it sometime. Yeah. It'll be Wednesday night or Thursday night. My Nickel City or my league game is Thursday night on Greg's stream, so we might just do it afterwards. Or we might do it Wednesday night.
Most
we don't
likely, know. Probably Wednesday night. We'll see. We'll work it out. We'll work it out.
But we will be doing our Universe Extended episode 27 of Mando, guaranteed before Sunday. Otherwise, JJ's out of luck. I'll find somebody else to talk with about it because I'm not going to not have this conversation. And I don't even know. I just don't know if I can even wait till Sunday. Because if everything is true, this is going to be one of the biggest finales that we've had with the biggest cliffhanger ever. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, all right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Have a good night, and we will see you next week, Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you want to join our normal Planning Phase Syndicate podcast, if you just like our Universe Extended stuff, we will be back Wednesday or Thursday live on Twitch to talk about episode 8 of season 3 of The Mandalorian. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.